Hi guys, I hope this video finds you doing well. I hope you are finding a way to really encounter God, even during this uncertain time when things are out of the ordinary. I just pray that you are finding time to seek God's face and that He is revealing new things to you, whether it's through Dan and I talking to you or through the messages that you're getting during your challenge group, or even when Pastor Sean is preaching, or even just during your own quiet time. I pray that you are truly engaging with God. Today I want to talk a little bit about the tabernacle and just remind you of some things that we've talked about, that Dan taught us about. But then in this book, there is a chapter that takes a few things a little bit farther. And so I wanted to go with that and just touch on something that we didn't get the chance to talk about with Dan when we met, or maybe if we did talk about it, we didn't talk about it in as much length as I'm going to talk about today. So let's get started. I'm sure you remember that we had a conversation about the fact that there were actually 13 tribes. And so this is because Joseph, as we know, was sold into slavery and became the prime minister in Egypt. And Joseph had two sons. And so when Jacob joins Joseph in Egypt, he adopts Joseph's two sons as his own. And thus, Joseph's tribe is split into two. And so there becomes 13 tribes. But several places in Scripture, it talks about the 12 tribes of Israel. And that's because there are tribes that are left out. So a lot of times, the Levites are left out because the Levites were the priests. We know that. That's something that we've talked about a lot during our study of the tabernacle. But because they were priests, they were not allowed to be fighting men. And so any time that it talks about the tribes fighting, the Levites are going to be left out because they're priests. They don't go to war like the other tribes do. There are also times that other tribes are left out. For example, on 3 occasions, the tribe of Dan is left out. And that includes in Revelation 7. They're left out, which is interesting to a lot of scholars. And I'm sure Dan would have something to say about that. But that's not something that I have dived into as much. And so if you have any questions about that, you should definitely ask Dan. But the tribe of Dan is left out several times as well. So don't be confused when you read about the tribes and it says 12. Know that there are 13, but Dan or the Levites are being left out depending on the concept. So I just wanted to remind you guys of that before we go on. So another thing that I wanted to remind you of is those 4 faces that we talked about associated with the tabernacle, and how those faces, remember, are associated with Jesus. And it's the lion, the man, the ox, and the eagle. And those are related to Jesus in the Gospels, if you remember. We talked about that. Because Jesus is the Lion of Judah, the suffering servant, which is the man, the Son of God, which is the eagle, which is the sign of royalty, remember, and he's the Son of Man. And so, the suffering servant would be the ox, and he's the Son of Man, which would be the man. And so just remember that there are those 4 faces. But then taking that even further, those 4 faces are then kind of given to the tribes. And so the tribe of Ephraim and all of the tribes under him, which is also the tribe of Manasseh and the tribe of Benjamin, they are given the face of an ox. The tribe of Reuben, which is the tribe of Reuben, the tribe of Simon, and the tribe of Gad, they are given the face of a man. The tribe of Judah, which we know, again, is the royal line, which is the tribes of Judah, the tribes of Issachar, and the tribes of Zebulun. I don't know if I said that right, but those tribes are given the lion face, which makes sense because they are the royal line, the tribe of Judah. And that's why Jesus is called the Lion of Judah. And then lastly, the tribe of Dan, which would be Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. They are given the eagle. So when the tribes would camp, they would camp under those 4 main tribes. So each camp would have a main tribe that everyone would be expected to follow the tribal standard of that lead tribe. And then 2 other tribes would camp with them. So there were 4 sides of the tabernacle, we know that. And the 4 different lead tribes and their 2 tribes that were under them would camp on the separate sides of the tabernacle. And then the Levites would camp in the middle, directly around the tabernacle, because they were working in the tabernacle as the priests. And so they would camp directly around it. And so this created a cross around the tabernacle, because there were 4 sides. But we know that some of the tribes were larger than the other tribes. This book actually gives us the specific numbers related to the tribes. So if you want to take a second and look at those, I know it might be backwards on the video, but they were pretty large tribes, but some tribes were larger than others, and typically the lead tribe for each of the areas would be the largest tribe, but they were also specifically given a direction that they had to camp. So for example, we know that the Levites camped directly around, and the other tribes were given a direction. So for example, the camp of Judah had to camp east of the Levites. And then the others were placed in the other directions. And this caused a problem, however, because they were given the specific direction to camp directly east of the Levites. And so if the Levite camp only spread 100 yards east of the tabernacle, then the tribe of Judah would have to camp within that 100-yard radius and then go whatever length in that 100-yard width, and then go whatever length they had to get all of their people in. So they couldn't spread out so that suddenly they were camping southeast or northeast. They had to be directly east of the Levites. And the same goes for all of the other camps. And they were given, again, their specific direction that they had to camp. And when you think about it, it sounds really strict and kind of strange. Why would it matter if the tribe of Judah spread out and went a little bit southeast or a little bit northeast? Like, why does that make a difference? But there is such an importance, and we know that everything about the tabernacle points to who Jesus Christ is. And so I'm going to show you a picture of the camp, and I want you to see that even when Jesus told Moses how the camp and the tribes would be laid out, he had in mind his perfect plan for salvation. Here's our camp. And as you can see, because of the different sizes of the tribe, we have a cross. And so I hope you can just rest in the fact that there's always a perfect plan. And just remember the cross in all things the closer we get to Easter. Love you guys, and I hope to see you in person soon.